gotta tell me.
I am Kesha Lambert. I'm a wedding and portrait photographer based in New York. Well, my business is based in New York. I live in Connecticut. My husband and I run our business together. We are a husband and wife team. We have 3 beautiful boys, so I'm a mom. I am a mother of multiples. I started my journey in photography many years ago. I won't date myself, so you know how elderly I am. But I am a lawyer by profession, and I made the transition into photography because of life changes. It wasn't a bold decision to pursue passion. I had a very great, cushy job in the legal field, got laid off, and it kind of made me reassess, it made me reassess, you know, what I wanted to do. Photography was always there in the wings, so I also feel like it was kind of a divine push in this direction. A lot of opportunities started to open up for me in the field of photography that just weren't in the legal field, and it was very odd because I worked in a niche area where there weren't a lot of people. You know, there was a need, but it was just interesting that it's just like I was being pushed in a certain direction. So here I am today, 6 years full time, and I've grown my business organically, and I'm going to just share some of the things that I did to kind of get to where I am today in terms of putting together a plan, a growth strategy for my business. And I say it this way because I feel like the growth strategy is very individualized. There's so many things that you could potentially invest your time, energy, and money in terms of advertising and in terms of attracting new clients. It's really like mixology. It's really like putting together a cocktail that works for you. And I'll just run through a list of things that I tried. 1 second, because I've pretty much tried them all. So how many of you here, it sounds like there's a mix. There are some people who've been in business for a while, people starting out. How many of you have given thought to these, like a very specific plan of, this is how many clients I would like to have, this is how much I would like to earn? Have you thought about that, and have you set a goal? Raise your hand if you have. You have this very specific annual goal. This is kind of a negative, I guess not really a negative question. How many of you feel like you are meeting that goal? Or you're not okay, so hopefully some things that I can share here today will help you to kind of get to that place. So back to the things that I've tried. So I think it's very important when you're putting together a growth strategy is to be very specific about, 1, knowing what your product is and knowing who you are, who your ideal client is. You need to know who you want to be working with. As a creative service provider, you understand that the satisfaction end of it, the whether or not the person walks away from this experience happy and feeling great, has a lot to do with meeting expectations and with being matched with the right people. So while we want to earn money, that's why we run a business, we also want to make sure that we are vetting our clients as well and making sure that we are finding that the right people, we're attracting the right people, and that we're working with the people that we should be. Another thing, so you need to identify who your ideal client is. You need to specifically set a goal for how many clients you can handle, you want to handle, and how many clients you can handle, while also maintaining the level of quality and service that you want to provide. And these goals need to be, you should write them down, they should be specific. And I'm being very general. Part of knowing what I want to make $1 million. No, you should you should set a very realistic year-end goal every year, right? What you need to earn and what your goal is, right? And then when you're thinking about identifying your ideal client, you really need to describe that person. What is your Your creative service provider, what is your style? Your ideal client, is it a person who is very type A and meticulous? Is it a person who loves clean and classic shots? Is it a person who is a daredevil? Is it a person who is having, you know, a wedding, in my case, a wedding at grand ballrooms, or is it the person who's getting married in a bookstore? Like, you need to think about who that person is, because once you know who that person is, you'll start targeting your efforts to where those people are. Those people are in very specific places. Your client can be found in very specific places. I'll just tell you quickly, I said I was going to run through some of the things I've tried. When I was starting out, I had no idea. I just liked to take pictures. I had no idea who I wanted to be working with. I just liked taking pictures of people. I love weddings. I tried a lot of things. So I think out the gate, I started with deal sites, Groupons and Living Socials. Now, Groupons and Living Socials can be really effective in getting a high amount of foot traffic in the door for you, right? It does cheapen your brand a little bit. It can potentially cheapen your brand, but there's lots of room for upselling and all that wonderful stuff. I learned a lot by doing Groupons and the deal site. That was very early on when I started out. I wanted to just get people, anybody, to book me. And so I did these things, and I found myself feeling you know, unfulfilled. I found myself feeling overwhelmed. They were not, we were, you know, the negatives were that, you know, these were deal seekers. These are people who were, majority of them were not going to, I thought at the time, in the immediate, they were not going to book me at my regular rate. They were not going to, you know, they were not going to be my customer, right? But what I found out about the deal sites years down the line is that it was a seed that was planted. All that foot traffic that came through the door, even though some of them were not the right client, there were fruits that were born from that years later, in the form of people coming back and referring people. Hey, you did, I did a boudoir deals. Hey, you did a boudoir shoot and my so-and-so is getting married now. A lot of that happened. So while it was not, it might be the correct route for someone, depending on if your goal is to have a high volume. Say your business model is, I want to have a high volume of clientele because I'm an upselling business model, then a deal site might be a good route for you to go. If you are more a lower client number, higher quality of experience, can you guys hear me? Oh, I thought I heard something. If your business model is more less clients and not volume of clients, greater quality of experience, then that's probably not the route to go. Some of the other things I've tried are directory lists, and so that's like your Munabuchi, The Knot, Wedding Wire, other blogs. I've tried directory lists. Now this is a whole different level of analysis because these things cost. Some of them are free, but the level of analysis I did with the directory list is seeing, you know, I trialed and see which ones worked for me. One of the things that worked for me there were some of them that had a decent return on investment. Most of them were not worth me putting my money, my dollars in that area. There was one, and I'm not going to name them specifically, that did work. There was one that did work in that I made some invaluable connections with other members of the group. It also brought in, I could actually trace actual business to people finding me on this directory list. So I chose to stay listed in that directory. So I bring up directory lists to say that a lot of it is trial and error. You have to kind of experience it for yourself. I wouldn't say that they're all great and that they all work, and I wouldn't say that they all don't work. It really is, some of them, you have some that are very general and broad, and you have some that are very specific to a target client, be it women of color, or this one targets, you know, same-sex weddings. You know, Some of them are more effective than others, and it's really kind of a matter of, you can get your feet wet by at bare minimum signing up for like baseline listings, where there are a lot of them that offer a free level of listing, just to kind of make sure that you have your presence there. Some of the other things I tried are blogging, effective. I'll go back to, I'm going to just list them off and tell you what I found to be effective for me. Blogging, getting published, submitting my work for real wedding features, social media, and that's a whole other kind of like directory list. Not one size does not fit all. So Instagram could be a big lead referral for you, or Facebook could be, and then once you find out, you know, whatever it is that people are finding you on, what kind of content is garnering the most attention? Like, what kind of content are you putting out there that makes your phone ring and your email inbox get flooded? And you know, that takes paying attention to patterns. There are insights now on Instagram, for example, that there's so much intel in there, and it's really great, that can give you an idea, just knowing who your demographic is, who, you know, the majority of people that are interested in your work, who's following you, is giving you a lot of information that would be useful. I've tried print advertisements, trade shows, networking events, vendor partnerships, online advertisements. I've not tried being on like a venue's preferred vendor list. I don't believe in those. I'll tell you why later. Client appreciation events, sponsorships, and then investing in your relationships with your clients, or gifts and things like that. Of these things, I've kind of narrowed down some things that have been really effective for me. I'm going to start with relationships, and I know you probably all know this, word of mouth is king, but it's not just word of mouth. What is word of mouth? Word of mouth is, for example, finding out that a venue who you have no relationship with has been recommending you to people that book their event there. Word of mouth is someone finding you because they saw you shooting a portrait session in the park. They observed how you worked and they thought you were doing something great. Word of mouth is not necessarily your client. It's every time you're in a space where you can be observed, what is the impression that you're leaving? And it may seem like some kind of like loosey-goosey unicorn, but these are seeds that are planted, and these are things that bear real fruit. Like when you are working an event, when you are working a wedding, when you're shooting on location, and they're observing eyes all around, even when you don't realize it, you should always bring your A game, and you should always be prepared. One of the things that Neil is back there, my husband is always like getting on me about is that I don't have business cards on me all the time. Yeah. While I'm working, a lot of times I don't have business cards, and I'll be shooting on location and a stranger will come and say, oh, and I'll tell them my name. Do you have a card? Always be prepared to plant a seed. It may, everywhere you go, you should always have your materials on you to leave, in case somebody observes you and they just want to hold on to that information. Word of mouth, how do you cultivate word of mouth? And a big part of it is tapping into relationships. This has been the biggest referrer for me. Tapping into relationships is not just friends and family, support from friends and family, but it means finding your tribe. You know, finding your tribe is, for example, people who you know, in my case, I work weddings. I work with planners and florists and dress designers. Reinforcing those relationships. Even, you know, a lot of times as a photographer, everyone who touches an event, you don't necessarily make direct contact with them. A lot of times you'll see your client, you might see, if there's a planner involved, you might see certain vendors, but there's a whole host of people that go behind an event, that go behind producing a wedding, and it needs to be authentic. It shouldn't be, you know, like if you're gonna go try to date somebody, you don't just say, hey, can you come home and spend the night with me now? Or hey, let's get married now. You have to be authentic. You have to genuinely invest time and energy in people. The people who are running in the circle of clientele that you want to have. And it has to be authentic. It has to be, you know, coffee dates. It has to be, you know, in the case of a photographer, hey, I captured this picture of your beautiful work. You share them with it, you know, share it with you know, share it with them. Or it has to be, you know, check-ins. It doesn't happen instantly. It is an investment over time, but these are all seeds that plant. And then when the relationship blossoms, you find you have this network of people who are sending people your way, and you're recommend people without expectation of it being reciprocated. That's one of the other things I do. I recommend other photographers. If someone contacts me and I'm not available, I have a list of people that I'm like, hey, I think this person would be a great fit for you. If you're like my kind of work, I think some of these people might be. It's finding your tribe, finding, you know, that's other photographers, that's other people in the industry that you're working with that you develop a bond with. Because when they have that kind of feeling of camaraderie, a feeling of loyalty kind of develops. And you'll find that right now I have relationships with other people and they can share war stories with you. I have relationships with people. My biggest referrer are vendor relationships, client relationships. They will be your little foot soldiers that are strong-arming people to book you. So that's a big part of my effort is really just investing time and energy in people. And by the way, guys, feel free to stop me if you like. Just raise a finger if you have a question or if you have feedback. You can stop me. So part of investing in relationships is making sure the experience your client has, making sure on the very baseline that the experience your client has is a positive one. You want them to walk away from the relationship excited. You want them to walk away from the relationship feeling like you didn't just collect their money, but that you actually were interested in the case of a wedding photographer or a portrait, you were interested in capturing them authentically. You were interested in telling their story, that there's a genuine, that it's not just a give me the money situation. Because ultimately that's what gets people excited and makes them want to come back again and again, because they feel it's a business, but it's also very personal when it comes to somebody's family heirlooms, when it comes to someone's business project that is their baby that they've been working on, or when it comes to someone's wedding day. Even though they're looking to hire a creative, it's very, very personal, and they, you know, that connection is important. Them feeling authenticity from you is what will have them coming back. So some of the things that I do at the beginning of is trying to make the client experience keeping in contact. I'm very big on two things with my clients, and that is I gather lots of info with people in general, and it helps to helps to go into your growth strategy. I gather a lot of intel. How many of you here, like when someone, the clients you do have, do you know how they find you? Do you ask how they find you? Is that a part of, do you track it? Track it meaning I have my client list and they all found, you know, you can see, do you go back and look at it and say, I had 10 clients this year and 6 of them found me from my cousin so-and-so and 3 of them found me from Instagram. Do you guys look at that data? You do. Because that's a big, big important thing to do, because that is also what pulls you in and where you should be investing your energy. If your cousin so-and-so is the person who sent you 3 people this year, then cousin so-and-so needs to, you know, be taken out to dinner. Cousin so-and-so needs to be gifted something, you know, whatever that is. Invest because this person is really campaigning for you. If your biggest referrer is people are finding you on Instagram, I'll ask, you know, sometimes people volunteer the information. Some people will say, I've been following you, or I saw a post you did on such and such. I started paying attention to the posts that people say resonated with them. I found a pattern. I eventually found a pattern. You'll find, and a lot of groomsmen and gents will feel left out sometimes when they look at my Instagram feed. I post a lot of brides, a lot of bridesmaids. I post a lot of emotion. These are the things that people have told me. I found you on Instagram. I really love these pictures. That's the content that I focus on, because ultimately it's a portfolio, and I've discovered now that it's a legitimate source of leads. So that's where you should focus your energy. I also look at my analysis. I have almost an 80% following of women. Sorry guys. I do post content that because, you know, they are part of the equation, but my analytics are telling me what's working. And so that's what you kind of need to look at. Where was I? 1 second, I wanted to tell you. So if you're looking at, you should really run an analysis of how people always gather intel. That's what I was getting at earlier. I gather intel during the client onboarding process. I ask a lot of questions. I have questionnaires. I always try to have a conversation. We are in an era now where I would say like 99% of the people that book with me, I don't meet them in person before they book. I don't know if that's the same for everyone here, but a lot of people are, you know, all of my booking process is digital now, and everyone's busy. But I do try to gather intel about people, because one, I'm trying to make sure, part you save yourself, you get yourself matched with the right people by knowing a little bit about the people you're about to contract with. And it also is useful in terms of connecting with them. I can share, and if anyone wants to see some of the questionnaires that I send out, I'd be happy to share it with you guys. I will collect emails and I can send that to you. But I collect a lot of random getting to know you style information about people, because it gives me some common ground to connect with them later. I find that, you know, if you're a Martin Lawrence fan, then you're good with me. You know, if your favorite movie is Color Purple, no, like, it just gives you a lot of things to kind of give you a foundation to connect with people and to make sure you're matching up with the right people. And then gathering intel is good for running an analysis later, right? So not just from you have a question?
Oh, I was just saying, I guess the questions are answered in a way that, you know, may not be your fit. You just say you're not available, or how do you kind of?
I believe in honesty, and it's okay. So I don't believe in like telling somebody I'm not available if I am really available. I believe one way I'll put it is I'm all about managing expectations, right? If somebody is a big, like, so I hate shot lists. I'll tell you that. That's one thing. If I get wind that somebody's a big shot list person for weddings, I run like the
like they want to
because like I need a shot standing with the window with my head turned to, like, if somebody starts doing that.
Oh, I know. It's just different shot than big shot.
Well, this is really, I think it's mainly a wedding and event thing, right? It might sometimes happen with commercial photography or whatever. Which with commercial photography, they have like vision boards and things like that, or branding boards or whatever. But in the wedding and event world, brides and couples, you can give a photographer a shot list, like I want my shoes and this and that. I hate those things. I'm documentary. Now that doesn't mean that I don't want input from what a client wants. Like if a client wants it's very important for the client to have a picture with Auntie so-and-so. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about shot lists that delve into the creative side of things, that tell you, where you I want to shoot from a shot from the right side of the processional. I want to, like, when I see that, I know that automatically or if I see that somebody's like, you know, they are, because I'm the opposite of type A. I'm the exact opposite of type A. Although I tend to, it seems to attract some people, some type A clientele. That doesn't mean that if my couple is type A that we're not a good fit, because I have some type A personalities that come and they'll say, well, I want somebody who's going to push me, or who's not like me. You know, I don't want another me to capture my wedding. I trust you. So, like, I definitely, you know, back to your question, like, if you're getting tips that it might not be a good match, you can be honest and say, look, I think it sounds to me, it sounds to me like you're looking for X, Y, and Z. Full disclosure, this is what I do. This is what I provide. You know, I want to, you know, kind of put it on them. Like, this is, you know, lay it out.
5 more minutes.
5 more minutes. Okay. Let's open up the floor for questions. I really didn't. Yeah, go on.
You mentioned a few things like knowing your customer, having this data of where they've come from, so you can do analysis. So my question to you is what CRM would you recommend to gather all this data? It can be probably overwhelming if you're trying to do it on an Excel spreadsheet or your notes app on your iPhone. So
right.
What are you using?
So it does not have to. There are a number of tools out there. Like, you literally run a Google search and find a tool, right? It could be. What I'm suggesting is something very, very like baseline and very simple. It could be like it could be in a Word doc or an Excel spreadsheet, where you're literally one of the best sources for is what's working for you is where your existing clients found you, right? So it doesn't sound like we're talking about hundreds of people to track, right? It sounds like most of us are under 50. That's a very easy baseline spreadsheet to start with, right? It's tracking where they're finding you, right? The other thing is on the knowing who your client side is and who are they with. What planners are working with the client that you want, or, you know, I'm speaking in terms of wedding speak. You know, what florists or what venues are the clients that I want to work with going to, right? So on that side of the analysis, that's also kind of smaller analysis, because we're not talking about hundreds of pieces of information. This is something that you can do very hands-on, as you said. I actually keep a list in Word. So I track the information. I handle 50 wedding clients a year, and that's actually on the high side of where I want to be. So I keep a list. I collect all kinds of information about the 50 people that I'm work with. I also pay attention, you know, to the relationships or the lead referral sources outside of there's a wealth of information in the people that you're currently working with, but there's also a wealth of information in where those people that your ideal client is, where they are, where they hang out, what events are they going to, what vendors are they working with. Connecting with those people can be a source for additional information. Once you've tracked all of the information, you'll start to see patterns. But it's a very important part of coming up with your individualized plan is doing that analysis, being very specific, and paying attention to patterns, because they're there.
Okay.
It's already.
I keep asking.
Yeah,
But so when you find people that they connect with, like, how do you, I guess, reach out? Or do you just go to those events, or do you send them?
That's a great question.
You know,
right. So that goes back to relationship building.
Okay.
And this may seem extremely boring, and it might seem very obvious, but they are seeds that are being planted. So, like, if you know that there's a furniture rental company that all of their clients are, the clients you want are getting their furniture from this, make a connection with that furniture rental company. Break bread with them. If they're hosting an event, a lot of times people support their events and their seminars and their open houses, support their things. Be consistent. I'll tell you a story about, I'm a honestly, like, I'm an extroverted introvert, right? A little bit more of an introvert than anything. So I'm kind of like a no new friends person. Like, I got my little circle, because you know, peopling is hard for me sometimes. But I have people who have come to work with me, and why did they showed an authentic interest in helping, being helpful. They were consistent. Consistency is key. It felt authentic. The people that tried their way in, and it's just because my husband's the exact opposite. He's like, he walks in and he can command a room. It's a little harder for me, but the people that are here were consistent, keeping in contact. They were prepared. The presentation was great out the door. It wasn't just a, hey, you know, can you help me figure out how to get my images sharper, or, you know, I get a lot of messages like that, or hey, you know, like, it was here's a link to my portfolio. I'd love to meet up with you, that kind of thing. Not out the gate, just like, right. And it's an authenticity that comes with making those connections, and I've done the same, not just people, but the people who I wanted to build a relationship with. I have invested time in being there for their things and supporting their initiatives, breaking bread with them, not just the work stuff. It's an actual relationship that goes behind it that trickles over into the work stuff. Some of the biggest opportunities that I've had, you know, celebrity assignments, magazine covers, things like that, have come from relationships. We're just about out of time. Well, I am fully accessible, guys. If you ever want to talk, I'd be happy to share some of those questionnaires that I mentioned. So if you guys, I have business cards in there I can give you, and if you want to share your information, we can connect, and I'd be happy to share some of my client onboarding process and some of the spreadsheets that I use to gather information and analyze it. I'd be happy to share it with you guys.
Your gifts to your clients.
Yeah. So, plug for Sugar, who is not, I think she's based in this area, Taylor and Hope.
Yeah.
You know Sugar?
Taylor Sugar.
She did my client gift. Yeah, that was a game changer. So we started doing client gifts, and that, like, you can do one at the onboarding process as a thank you, and as your wedding, or, you know, in my case, a wedding, you know, your wedding day is almost here, kind of like a survival kit. It's a gesture. My client gift box, I love it. Sugar of Taylor and Hope designed it for me. What's in there? It's got like, it's like all branding. Like, she did my rebrand with my logo, but it has like a cute little notebook on it that says what's poppin'. It has, like, you know, a mug, blue champagne, and it's all branded. Candy poppers, because I wanted, so I think when talking to her, I was like, I want people to convey that I'm non-traditional, I'm fun, I'm kind of whatever. And so the box is really fun. And when we sent those out, oh my God, it was a game changer, and I'm glad that we did. And so I think that's you don't have to break the bank, you could do it yourself. Or if you want to invest in it, really invest in it. Like, I was really happy with the outcome of my client gift box. But I got really remarkable feedback from my clients, and it resulted in other people, like, you know, I know this was a great decision, and, you know, like, it just reinforces the relationship. So he's right, that's definitely something that if you are in a people kind of business where you're doing portrait work or wedding or events, that is a game changer. You should definitely think about doing something, even if it's a small gesture. Getting a surprise in the mail is always good.